So we're back in Second Life. Let's upload that texture. And we do File, Upload Image. And there it is, clock hand. Now when we get the preview of it, two things you may notice. First, it's a bit squashed, and secondly, it's got this white and grey checkered background. The reason it's a bit squashed is because we saved it as a long, thin texture, which when we apply it to our hand will be fine, but on the preview here it just looks a bit odd. That'll be okay, don't worry about that. And the white and grey checkered background means that that's the transparent part, which is exactly what we want, so that's worked pretty well. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Let's upload this. And that's done, and it's saved away to our inventory, so we can now start to use it. Let's rotate our hand back to the vertical position, and let's find our texture and apply it. So we'll go to the Texture tab, click on Texture. We'll apply it in fact, let's just apply it to the front face for now. Select Texture and click on the front face. And we find it amongst our textures, clock hand, there it is. Select it, and it looks pretty good. We've still got the default texture on the sides of the cube, and we'll need to fix that later. But for now, let's see how it works. You can see the edges because of those textures. Let's rotate it to say 30 degrees, which is 1 o'clock. Yep, looks pretty good. 90 degrees, 3 o'clock. 270 will be 9 o'clock, and back to horizontal. So that's it's working pretty well. We need to fix this problem where the you've got the sort of sides. In fact, I think the hand is still a bit too thick as well. So let's thin it out a bit. We don't need to be that thick. That's okay. Now, what texture are we going to apply on the sides? We don't really want any texture on the sides. We want it to be transparent on the sides as well. So what we would need to do in that case is to apply a transparent texture to the entire cube apart from this front face, and we can do exactly that. In order to do it though, we need a transparent texture to apply. Now Second Life by default doesn't make it easy for you to do that. You can actually achieve that via script. I've uploaded a texture called Transparency, and the way I created that, let me just nip into Paint Shop for a second. So what we can do here is create a new image. We'll make it 512 by 512, make sure the transparency box is checked, and it creates a completely blank image with nothing on it. We need to do our two steps, creating the mask and the alpha channel, so let's just do that quickly. New mask layer from image. It'll use opacity. There's no opaque pieces on our image at all, which is fine. Our mask will just be completely black. And then we can create save it to the alpha channel, and the preview we get is completely black, so that's all the transparent bit, which means once we've saved that away, if we now save that as a TGA file and give it another name, maybe call it Transparency, you can then import that into Second Life, and if you apply that texture to any object, the object will completely disappear. It'll be transparent completely, which is a bit dangerous in its own right. It's easy to lose objects by doing that. Typically though, you'd apply it just to one face, which is what we're going to, or perhaps more than one face, but not all faces, which is what we're doing in this case. It's a really useful texture to have. As I said, you can achieve the same effect by using a bit of script, but I find this it's much simpler to do, and it's only a $10 upload fee which you need to pay once, and it's worth doing. So I've done that before, so I already have one. So let's go back to Second Life. And what we can do here is go back to our Texture tab and apply our transparent texture, which I uploaded earlier, to every face. So that's done. We now have a completely transparent object. So we want to make sure we don't move off of it because it'll be difficult to find. So before we move off of it, let's select the texture option, click on the front face, and apply our hand to it. So there it is. Now we've got a hand that is transparent from the sides, as you can see, and is a nice clock hand from the front. So we're in pretty good shape here, I think. What we need to do now is to create an hour hand. So let's rename this object as clock minute hand, and then we'll copy it by holding down the Shift key and dragging to create a copy, and we'll rename the I'll just type it in again, rename it to clock hour hand. That's the copy we just created, and we need to move it back into position. So the minute hand is at position 31,585. So if we make sure this is 31,585, it'll be exactly on top of it. We'd need to shrink it down a bit because we don't want the hour hand to be the same size as the minute hand. So the size we're talking about here is a Z size. So if I change that from 383 to 0.25, we've now got a shorter hour hand. It hasn't resized the texture, it's just resized the object, which is why it looks a bit odd. So we go back to the texture tab here, you'll see that repeats per face are funny values. We need to change those back to 1, and then the texture will be defined correctly. So if we now rotate that hour hand to 30 degrees, which is 1 o'clock, it should now show 1 o'clock correctly, which is good. So we're pretty much set in terms of building the clock. The final stage is to write some script that'll wire up the rotation to the actual time so that the clock shows the correct time, and that's the final step on our journey.